Here we go. Always exciting. The psychology. I don't know what lesson we're on. I think we're on 111. Gotta be getting up there. We are almost done with the unit. So close. Got about 2 topics left to talk about. The song is Feel the Pain by Dinosaur Jr. Who ever heard of a group called Dinosaur Jr.? What a weird name for a group. Psych, 111. We're finishing up our psychology timelines. And we have worked our way into a more modern psych. Get this music off. That was Feel the Pain by Dinosaur Jr. Sounds like a barbecue joint. I don't know. I think I would like to eat a Dinosaur Jr. barbecue tonight. It's got me in the mood. So here is the sort of end of our psych timeline. We've worked our way into more modern history, modern psychology, into the 1900s, struggling with the pen cap. Always embarrassing on camera to struggle with simple little things like pen caps when you're on camera. Modern psych. So we left off in the late 1800s with guys like Freud and psychoanalysis. We left off in the late 1800s with other topics like behaviorism with Ivan Pavlov, which thought like the brain was like a black box. And then you're going to have this little gap. Maybe it was because of World War I. Maybe it was because of World War II. Those things probably got in the way. Maybe the Great Depression probably fueled it a little bit. Although, those German psychologists during World War II, at the beginning stages of World War II, they were fooling around with some crazy psychological experiments, unfortunately. But psychology kind of went through a little bit of a lull as far as new ideas until about the 1960s. And then in the 1960s, we're going to see like a new branch of psychology start to explode on the scene. And that new branch is going to be known as cognitive psych. Woo. Cognitive psychology, the 1960s. There's a bell, but it ain't yours. Don't be going anywhere. Don't be sneaking off on me. Cognitive psychology evolves in the 1960s for a very good reason. This was about the same time period that scientists were starting to really understand how to build computers that thought, right? And we know that our human brain thinks. That might be off the camera, but I got my think sign up there. Our human brain thinks, and computers think. And they started to, at least from a psychology point of view, they started to view the human brain sort of like a complex computer, or perhaps sort of the dog was wagging the tail or the tail was wagging the dog. Maybe what was happening was, with a better scientific understanding of how the brain works, maybe we were building computers that worked like a brain. Either way you cut it, there seem to be some linkages. That brain, right, the human brain, is basically a computer. Okay? The human brain is basically a complex computer, just like the one I got on my desk over here. Wherever my desk is, here it is. Right? Just like the one you're watching this video on, our human brain works similarly. And these cognitive psychologists, guys like Piaget, right? That's probably the main guy that we're going to study when we get into the nitty gritty. Not as famous as Freud, right? Roche. Again, not as famous as guys like Freud in our common lexicon of who we think of when we think of psychology. But these are dudes that are going to have a massive insight into how our brain works similar to a computer. And perhaps there were scientists that were making computers operate like a human brain as well. And so how does a computer operate, right? Computers have, let's just look at a computer. Computers have processing, right? There is a processing speed. In fact, you guys probably know maybe through playing your video games and stuff, one of the most valuable things you can have is processing speed in your computer, right? So that processing is sort of the speed at which things function. And then, right, computers also have memory, random access memory, or sometimes on a computer it's labeled as RAM. And so a computer has the ability to take a piece of information and store it. So we've got speed. We've got storage. What other aspects of a computer kind of make it tick? Well, computers sort of like follow a logical process, right? There is an order in which a computer does things. Right? There is a logic to how a computer works. You give it a command, and the command generates, right? The command will lead to a specific result. And so computers are logical. Of course, computers are designed by humans. So again, is it the brain designing the computer to be similar to it? Or is it the idea that we understand this is how a computer works, and maybe our brain's working the same way? Again, it doesn't really necessarily matter which way you look at that logical puzzle. We're starting to see some things here. And then finally, last but not least, my old sign up here. I don't know if it's on camera. I gotta see if it's on camera because it's just off camera. I'm gonna turn a little bit. Here it is. We think. Sort of quote unquote thinking. And this idea of cognitive psychology is that there are certain logical steps that the brain goes through, right? And a brain has sort of capabilities similar to a computer. And this is, of course, like the real basic overview of it. We'll take a look at it a little bit more when we get into the course, when maybe we get to that specific unit on cognitive psych. But let's just, I'm going to get behind the computer here real quick, and we're going to watch a quick video on YouTube. I want to distinguish how this is different maybe from a behavioral psychologist. So a behavioral psychologist, we're going to watch this quick little video here. If I can get over here. This is people reacting. We're going to watch people reacting to being called beautiful. And this is just a little high school experiment that I dug up on the internet land. Okay, but basically the camera person goes around and tells people while they are on camera that they look beautiful. And I want to focus on the reaction. Okay, I want to check out the reaction here.
I'm beautiful. I'm beautiful.
Now that's two kids in a row that went, aw. Sometimes there's an eyebrow raise, right? There's the speed at which you process being told that. There is the storage in your memory, right? A cognitive psychologist would say that there's a lot going on here. A behaviorist would simply say that you've been exposed to an outside stimuli, which is somebody saying that you're beautiful, and so your brain sort of reacts or is conditioned to react a certain way. But closer examination, I think when we watch these reactions, we might see that maybe like a computer working, like when we see that little blinking light going on the computer, there might be a little bit more going on. But of course, that would be how a behavioral psychologist and a cognitive psychologist would differ watching the same event.
Good. I was doing a project of things I find beautiful.
Oh, that's three kids in a row that went, oh.
I'm beautiful.
Oh.
Things I find beautiful.
Oh. Right? And so are we conditioned to go, oh, and then sort of smile? Are we just conditioned to do that based on this outside stimuli? Or is the idea of being told we're beautiful going through a much more complex sort of computer-like process in which we sort of enter the information, we process it at a certain speed, and we think logically about what's going on, and then we contemplate it, and then we react very quickly. And that would be more of like the computer or cognitive approach.
Taking pictures of things we find beautiful.
Oh.
Taking pictures of things I find beautiful.
Aww. Man, everybody has almost an identical reaction, which really gets you thinking. Are we conditioned to react that way, or is there something more complex going on? Well, let's just check out a different video that maybe a cognitive psychologist would find a little bit more enlightening. Right? Here is, oh, no, that is not it. Shoot. We might be failing here. I was going to show you a video of what happens like when people are exposed to a pickup line. Right? Because it's kind of the same idea. Somebody is expressing interest in you. I'm probably going to have to skip this commercial here if you don't mind 1 second waiting. Ah, yes, Ford Proud, good old American automobile truck.
Guys, this week we're back.
Found on road dead. Here's Eugene and Nick Lauer. They are psychology students at, I believe, the University of Ohio. Or perhaps it was Oklahoma, can't quite remember. And I'm just going to fast forward deep into the video where what they are doing as an experiment is using cheesy pickup lines on people and then sort of mapping out how the person reacts. And a cognitive psychologist would find this fascinating, I believe, because you'll notice that the people that they are using the cheesy pickup lines on, and we're just going to watch one for example, probably is processing what's happening through a much more complicated set of reasoning and logic. Let's check it out here. It looks like Oklahoma, by the way.
Oh.
Yes, I knew
Can you please hold this for me?
What is it?
Please.
I'm scared.
Just, what's your name?
Madison.
I'm Eugene. You know my name. No, the other
I
hand.
don't.
Other hand. Here, I'll come around this way. Here, other hand.
Felt like I'm actually scared.
Okay, what
Oh, she's actually scared, right? That's a much more complicated reaction than the first one we thought. We're like, oh, you're beautiful. And the person goes, oh, and then sort of smiles. This young lady from Oklahoma is really thinking about why this is happening. She is evaluating Eugene's motives. She's trying to figure out like, okay, he started with like, hey, you're beautiful. Do you mind holding this? And then he puts out his hand and she doesn't know what's in the hand. And so she's evaluating this whole situation. She is processing it slowly. Right? She's processing it slowly. She's probably accessing her memory into other certain similar situations to try and gain insight into what's happening. A cognitive psychologist would say that she is logically thinking about what the result's going to be. At some point, she says she's scared because she's afraid that he might have like some sort of a horrible thing in his hand. And she's really thinking about this.
But I hold it if it's something bad.
I'm scared. Okay, no, I'm scared. Tell me.
Don't be afraid. You're scaring me. You're scaring me. Stop.
Tell me what it is first.
It's gonna make you warm and happy.
Is it like a snake?
No. Trust me.
I'm scared.
Madison, right? Madison?
Yes.
Madison, trust me.
Right? So he's saying, trust me, and basically is like doing this cheesy pickup line, this little clever pickup line, and she's not really falling for it. Right? And so that is a much different scenario than the one that we watched earlier, where you just tell somebody they're beautiful and they instantly sort of like react by going, oh, or that's sweet. And they kind of raise their eyebrows and generally smile when told so. She is nervous, right? She is processing this similar type of stimuli where somebody expresses interest in you or tells you that you are desirable. And she's processing this very differently, almost computer-like, as she runs through her memory bank of what could, certain things that maybe like remind her of previous experiences, or she's running through the logic. She's really thinking about whether she wants to participate in this. Okie dokie. So that is pretty much the short of it. If I come back to my video. Right? That's pretty much the short of cognitive psychology, that the brain operates like a computer. Let's move into our last sort of modern psychological piece here. Again, 1960s, 1970s, psychologists start to get interested in what we will term as socio-cultural psych. What is socio-cultural psych? Well, this is probably pretty easy here. If I look at socio, this is society. That's based on the root word society, or a social situation. And culture, right? That's the way people live. And sociocultural psych is this idea that the way you live in the society that you grow up in, right, can influence your thinking. And we will refer to these things as group norms. Group norms affect thinking. We may also term this as sort of like being judgy. Not Judge Judy, but judgy. Now, this is a little different than sociology, although it's a good gateway to sociology. Sociology is like our next half of the course. Sociology is the study of giant social institutions like a religion, or maybe an entire race of people, or perhaps like an organization or a club, like if you're in the Boy Scouts. That's sociology. This is similar, right? Because we are sort of weighing how other people's ideas interact with our own. So in a way, it's similar to sociology, but it stands alone because we're not looking at the groups themselves. I'm not researching the Boy Scouts to figure out how Boy Scouts think, for instance, right? Instead, what we're doing is maybe just changing one certain little norm and seeing how that affects one individual human brain. Let's go back to the video clip. We'll watch a quick little video, an experiment on sociocultural psych. And this video features people getting on an elevator in the wrong direction, which is kind of like an old trick from a TV show a long time ago. But so here we go. We're going to load the elevator. As we watch, we're loading the elevator, and people are going to stand facing the wrong direction. Normally, you would turn around and face the door.
Turn to face the back of the elevator when others follow.
But they're going to face the back.
All right. In the blue t-shirt, that is Nadia. She is an innocent passerby.
There's Nadia.
Has nothing to do with this. Everybody else in that elevator, they all work for Would You Fall for That? They are all in on the experiment. They are all purposely facing the wrong way.
Okay, so just we're clear. Everybody's facing the wrong way. They are in on the experiment, except for poor old Nadia down here, who they've highlighted. She is not in on the experiment, and we're going to see how the group norm of facing the back of the elevator is going to affect Nadia's thinking.
Nadia is facing the front. You can just see the back of her head. Wearing the blue t-shirt, that's Nadia. She is facing the front of the elevator like a normal human being. Everybody else is facing the back.
Notice he said the word normal human being. That is the cultural norm in our society, is to turn around and face forward towards the door and the buttons.
We're playing this to you in real time, no editing, as it actually happened. Okay, floor 2. Rebecca gets off, Emily gets on, she also works for us. We're swapping people in and out to reinforce the behavior. Emily's acting like it's the most normal. Oh, Nadia's turn. Nadia, okay, her bag is slipping off her shoulder. She's nervously playing with it.
She's thinking about it.
Nadia's now halfway round. Will she go any further? Emily gets off, Mike gets on. Again, Mike works for the show. Presses his button, faces the back like it's the most normal thing in the world, like he does it every day. Nadia is really feeling the pressure right now.
I'm not going to see anyone else.
Aha. So what's going on socioculturally in her mind is she's feeling certain pressure. Maybe she feels like everybody else knows something that she doesn't, right? And she's feeling some pressure to conform on an individual psychological basis.
Someone else.
Scott's making some small talk.
He was in celebrity rehab, I think.
She's looking towards the back of the elevator because everybody else is. Floor 4. Fourth floor, Mike gets off. Lauren gets on.
Oh, that's going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back.
Oh, and Nadia.
Yes, the straw that broke the... After the third person gets on and faces the back, she finally decides, well, that must be what we're doing here, right? And her socio-cultural impact on her individual single human brain has now taken full hold, and she's decided to turn around and face the back of the elevator. Okie dokie. So just again, a brief example of socio-cultural psych. And that about does it for today. Those are the two modern branches of psychology on our psychology timeline. Hope you enjoyed it. That does it for our timeline. Next time you tune in, we're going to be taking a look at the ethics of doing psychological research, like that experiment that we just watched in the elevator. Was that ethical? I'm not sure. We're going to have to debate exactly what makes an experiment ethical. And that'll be our next episode of Psych. Thanks.